Good evening, everybody. How are you? This is Enrique of Spanish United, founder and director. Uh, Tonight, we have a returning guest by the name of Fredrick Shaw Jr. Can you introduce yourself to the audience, Fred?
Yes, I'm Reverend Fredrick Shaw Jr. I am the international spokesperson and director of public affairs for the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. I'm also the president of the Inglewood South Bay NAACP, and I'm affiliated with a lot of clergy groups and organizations throughout Los Angeles County.
Awesome. Welcome back to the show. It's always an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
Perfect. So as I spoke with Sandy, she sent me a list of questions that we're going to be talking tonight is going to be on children and psychotropics and electroshock and also Killology. So I will start with the first series of questions, which is how many children in the U.S. are prescribed psychiatric drugs? A lot of people are interested, how this is affecting our children in our country. So let's start out with that first question first.
Well, right now, in America alone, there is 6.7 million children on psychotropic drugs. So to give you an idea, that is the size of a 100,000 seat arena filled up 67 times with nothing but children that are on psychiatric drugs.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
If you're from Los Angeles, it's the Staples Center 135 times.
Wow.
So that's the type of thing you imagine. It doesn't seem like it become a household word, mental health and psychiatric drugs and give me my medicine and stuff. But when you look at it in that sense, if you've ever been to the Staples Center in Los Angeles, that's 18 to 20,000 people. And you just imagine that filled up 135 times with nothing but kids on psychiatric drugs. Or like I said, the Coliseum or 100,000 seat arena 67 times with nothing but children on psychotropic drugs. That's just too much drugging in America.
And, what do you think is causing all these children to be put on these medications? Because they're just mislabeled as, with some type of learning disability, and then that's just an excuse to drug these children.
Well, that's what's going on. When you consider, this is a whole lot of kids. This is the kids that are in children and family services. These are the kids that are in foster care. These are the kids in juvenile probation homes. All of these type of kids. Then they will also drug kids that have been diagnosed with learning disabilities in school. So everybody's in on it. And you got to know that in all of the facilities and the educational center I just mentioned, they get paid extra money for these kids to be on these psychiatric drugs. Mm-hmm. So there's incentive to do that. So, like when I owned my own group homes, we could have practically doubled the money that we were making if we would have put the kids on psychiatric drugs. Because I knew the effect of these drugs, I would not do that. But I couldn't sell the children out for the money. But there's many of these group homes and stuff who know better, but there are those who don't know better. They're just going along with what they're told, the requirements, the restrictions, and most of us see dollar signs instead of the gleam in a child's eye.
Mm-hmm. I was actually watching a program with my mom just before you called in. It's called 60 Day In. Have you ever heard of that show? It's on Arts and Entertainment.
No, I haven't. Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's a show that recently just came out on Court TV, and I was watching with my mother, and she was telling me that it's about different people that are that go as undercover inmates that are like police officers, correctional facility officers, people from the law. And the whole purpose of the show is to expose what's going on in the correctional facilities, to see what's going on there, and also to have these people that are undercover agents, to have empathy, because a lot of people that go in there into the that are in the facilities that are prisoners, a lot of them are mentally ill that, in my opinion, shouldn't even be there to begin with, because prisons and correctional facilities are not meant to house mental patients, because they don't have either the training or the resources to do so. So a lot of these, people that are in there, a lot of them, they have really serious issues. And I was thinking about the last few conversations that we have that it seems that our prison system today has become the dumping ground for all of the mental patients, the people that are the outcasts of society. Instead of focusing on prevention, there's too much focus on punishment than there is on rehabilitation.
And that is true. But I would remind people that they refuse or they have never done an investigation to see how many people that are in prison that are mentally ill actually became mentally ill after receiving so-called help. Because the moment you put these kids on these psychiatric drugs, when they're in the probation system, when they're in the elementary schools, then these drugs, by the admission of the commercials themselves, cause suicidal tendencies, homicidal tendencies, hallucinations. So if you're going to treat a person who is supposedly needs your help and you're going to give them a drug that causes these type of side effects, then when they get to the prison system, that's not the place for them because they are mentally ill. But where did they actually become mentally ill? Because you can't read doesn't mean that you're mentally ill. And that's where we have to find out which came first, the chicken or the egg, because we're dealing with the mental health, but we're not dealing with the fact we got 6.7 million children on these drugs. And what happens to these children? How do they end up? Where is their future when you're giving them drugs that are basically Ritalin and meth? So, that's where it gets real tricky, because why would you give a kid that is basically a drug equal or the same as cocaine or as meth when they're children? See, and these are the things that are not being explored. These are the things that our politicians have to pay a close attention to. And I pray to God that they can prove me wrong, but they can't. And that's the problem of it. And like I tell people, don't believe me, believe the commercials that they put out, because they have to tell you the side effects of these drugs.
I see those commercials all the time, and they say it so quickly that you can't even understand what they're saying. They're saying blah, 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 and you don't even catch, the side effects.
Exactly. And let me tell you this, it's not that they're necessarily trying to be slick. It's just that there's so many side effects to these drugs that are documented that they have to say it like that to get through it all in the time of a commercial.
That's true.
So you got a lot of stuff going on there. And I just say we as people have to become alert and become aware, and we got to start asking questions on everything.
I agree with you. I think that's something very important. That's one of the things that I used to teach my students back then when I was tutoring, that don't go by what I say. I always encourage them to ask questions, look at the facts, look at the evidence, research, investigate, and then come to your own conclusions based on facts and critical thinking. And I think that's very, very important.
That is oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go. No, I was going to say that that's very important.
Well, actually, that is the way to teach. And you have to consult the understanding of the child. And what we do in this system, we're not letting them participate. We're just shooting information into them with no way of knowing if they're absorbing it or not. So what the methods that you were using is actually the way it's supposed to be done.
Thank you. And the second question is, are children being prescribed electroshock?
Yes, actually, is a very unfortunate, and in my viewpoint, and I'll just give my viewpoint, is criminal. Because if you ever have just stopped and watched a child between 2 and 4 years of age, or a child of 18 months, and then to consider that a child like that receives electrodes through the brain. And what we don't talk about is that a lot of these children are being electroshocked before they're even born, because they are electroshocking pregnant women. And if you're pregnant and the child is inside of you, that child is absorbing that electroshock also. And in many cases, they have miscarriages and the child dies.
Mm. So how are they applying the electroshock on pregnant women? That they take the electroshock and put it by the womb or the stomach, or how does that
No,
work?
no. They do it the normal way. They attach it to the head and light the votes, and it just goes through the entire body.
Oh.
Yeah, the electroshock goes. Let me just give you an idea. Now, it varies sometime in the to the degree that they administer it, but electroshock goes up to 460 volts. In our light sockets at home, that's 120.
Right.
So you're about almost 4 times the electric shock. And a lot of us boys, when we were little, stuck forks in the light socket and all that.
Right.
So we know what shock is. but imagine 4 times that much.
Well, yeah.
Through the body of a woman, and the child is not even born yet. What is happening to that child?
It's just destroying them mentally.
Exactly. And then once you've destroyed them mentally through electroshock or through psychotropic drugs, then you get to treat them as patients for life. And so go again with, the financial incentive of the whole thing, because once a child is on these drugs and stuff, then they can very well have problems the rest of their life that will always bring them back to the field of mental health, and mental health can continue to prosper on their misfortune.
Wow, I was not aware of that. That's pretty horrible.
Oh yeah.
And okay, the third question is, what are the ages that they go through electrical shock, the children?
What ages can children be when they get electric shock?
Yeah, like what are the ages when they usually get this? My question.
Well, I don't know when they usually get it. I just know that they are getting it from 0 to 5 years of age. They're electroshocking babies before they can even talk and walk. And then, in some cases that delays their ability to talk and walk. And now because they have that delayed aspect to their lives, then they're considered slow or mentally ill. And so, but it goes from the womb all the way up until about 18 years of age. You can get, and then as an adult, we all know you can get electroshock. Mm-hmm. So, and one more thing on the electroshock, if for some reason we're out partying, somebody thinks it's slick and put something in our drink and we flip out, we could end up in a mental hospital being electroshocked before our family even get to us.
Mm-hmm. That's very true.
Yeah.
Wow, that's something. And the fourth question is, what is the correlation between Medicaid and prescribed psychotropic drugs in children in the U.S.?
Give me that question again, please.
Yeah, sure. What is the correlation between Medicaid and prescribed psychotropic drugs in children in the U.S.?
Oh, Medicaid. Oh, you're talking about Medicaid. Okay. Yeah. In the poor families, electroshock and stuff are being administered through programs like Medicaid and so forth. They're doing that across the nation, but then that's more targeted at the poor. So you're hitting poor whites, you're hitting Latinos, you're hitting Blacks and other minorities who are a part of that Medicaid system, and that is who's getting these electroshock because the government pay for it. Me and you wouldn't pay for our own electroshock.
Absolutely.
So it's like it gets recommended, gets frowned on if you don't want it, and if I could say something about that, and I know we're on a time limit, but when I worked a job, I won't call the company, they became very suppressive to the employee. I went out on workman's comp for stress. When you do that, you have to go to psychiatry and see mental health. When you don't want to take the drugs, because you know I wouldn't take the drugs, then it's almost like they threaten your disability money or workman's comp money if you won't take the psychiatric drugs. Mm-hmm. Now, I was smart enough because I'm with CCHR and so forth, been around for 30 years helping them and so forth. It's like, I was smart enough to tell the doctor, well, I want to first go into some kind of coping classes and so forth like that. But most people don't know to ask for that.
Well, of course.
So they referred me over and I did the classes. Actually, I started running the class almost. But, you know, a lot of people who do not know how to do that, they just go along, take the medication, they trust the doctor, and they have no idea the side effects that can come off of that. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say, for example, my mother dies and I'm feeling very sad, sorrowful, and they say, okay, you're suffering from depression. But that is actually the normal reaction for when your mother dies.
Of course.
But we get drugged like there's something wrong with us. When actually, probably since Cain killed Abel and Eve probably cried, that has been the way we release our pain, our mental anguish. Mm. So now we're drugging that which is the normal response for the situation that we're facing. So you go in, you were depressed, you took a pill for depression, you start hearing things, you took a pill for that, you start seeing things, you took a pill for that, and then you start feeling suicidal and they give you a pill for that. Mm-hmm. But you walked in only with a situation because mom had died.
Right.
And now way down the road contemplating suicide. And when you commit suicide, then they say, see, mental health is real.
Right. Of course. And the last question of the two-part question of children's psychotropics, electroshock, is what can be done about this? So what can be done to resolve or to address these issues that are happening with the kids?
Well, the thing, and I'm glad you know we're discussing it. The first thing and the most important thing is the parents must become alert. They must become knowledgeable on the subject of these drugs, of electroshock, and what's going on in the field of mental health. And then the parents must gather together and basically demand that the politician, I'm not even saying ban it, I'm saying the politicians create the investigation to where these drugs should be investigated, electroshock be investigated before they allow it to happen. No new cases should occur until they can prove the effectiveness of electroshock and psychotropic drugs, but they won't do that because they know they can't show the effectiveness. The only effectiveness they can show is that a person dumbs down and is not themselves. So where I might have been a pain to everybody in my family, now you basically destroyed me spiritually or mentally. And now I'm not a problem to anybody, but I'm not nearly as active and alert or as wise as I was. And right. So we have what is supposed to be the outcome. It is not like one young man told me in our museum, electroshock works because my grandmother doesn't nag me anymore. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe she was supposed to be nagging you because she was looking out for you. But now it's better for her to keep her mouth shut and be over in the corner talking to herself than it is to be contributing to the family.
That's true. That's very, very true indeed. And I just feel that the way the system is here is not just the fact that it's for profit, but it's like because of the individualism of our society, that's one of the reasons why we have breakdown of the family, breakdown of many things. And that's why our society is the way that it is because people don't live in community like they used to compared to other countries. Yeah, they do have social problems as well, but you don't see the magnitude of the social problems over there as we do here. So we're like number one in everything, in addictions and violence, child abuse, sexual abuse, etc. So it's like that's one of the reasons why nobody wants to take America seriously. 'Cause it's like, how can we impose morals on others when we ourselves don't fix our own social problems? And this has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with, justice, doing the right thing.
Well, you're absolutely right. And you touched on a very important point, because in this country, we spend more on medicine, we spend more on healthcare than any other country in the world. And we die the fastest. We have the most cases of mental illness. We have all of this. So somewhere along the line, we're supposed to understand that we're doing something wrong. And the something wrong is the fact that we got the fox guarding the hen house, telling the farmer that we need more foxes because the chickens are coming up missing. So we got mental health benefiting on the misery of people, and we continue to let them expand, and we give more and more money for this, but society has not gotten better. The homeless population has exploded off the chart. We have more people stabbing people who they don't even know, shooting people they have never seen before. We have more of those things happening. And in the Bible, it tells us, I apologize for going minister a little bit.
No, it's fine. It's okay.
But it tells us to beware of those who are in sheep clothing, the false prophets. Mm-hmm. Beware, because inwardly they are raving wolves, and we will know them by their fruit. And the fruit is not educating the children, homeless population explodes, soldiers killing themselves at 20 a day. This is the fruit of mental health, but we keep paying for it. Well, if we keep paying for it, we're going to get more of it. That's wrong.
And one thing also that the scripture says, not to, to divert from the conversation, it also says that we are going to be judged how we treat the least among us. And Jesus said that if we do unto the least among us, you're doing it unto him. And I feel that we are a country that is so wealthy in resources and in finances, but yet we're not taking care of the least among us, and we're going to be held accountable to, regardless if we're religious or not. It has nothing to do even with religion. It has to do with basic human dignity.
Well, and you're right about that. And basically what they're doing is they found a way to capitalize on the poor and the ignorant and the unknowledgeable. So that's what they do. And but we as people can't talk about what they're doing to us. We must stand up and stand together and start addressing these issues. I'm not talking, and I want to make this clear. When I say addressing the issues, I don't want anybody thinking I'm talking about burning buildings or doing anything. I'm talking about handling the politicians at the ballot box. Right. And when you do it that way, nobody can scream and holler. Nobody can say it was unfair, because all the politicians will know it's coming, because we're telling them this is what we want. They are supposed to serve us. Mm-hmm. They're supposed to be there on our behalf, not on big corporation behalf, not on their own behalf and what they can get out of it. They're supposed to be serving and representing the people.
Right, and that's the whole point of being a public servant. They are in the service of the public. And one thing that I have to say, that a lot of politicians, they always like to blame government, but I've noticed that not one single politician, probably with the exception of Bernie Sanders, criticizes the corporations. And the corporations are the problem in this country, not really government. Believe it or not, government doesn't really have control over a lot of things. It's corporations that own everything. It's pretty much an oligarchy. That's what's happening today. So you don't really have government control in a lot of things. In many aspects, the politicians answer to the corporations.
And that is my exact point. There has to be a choice. Either you want the people to serve the people who vote you in office, or you want to sell out to the big corporations. But corporations, when they're not checked, when you don't make them hold pollution standards, when you don't make sure you take care of the environment, when they can make money on the souls of the people, then you have double-crossed the country and you're in treason. And I'm not putting this on every politician, because you mentioned Bernie Sanders, and there's a lot of politicians out there who want to do good. But as one politician told me, that I can cause a big stink about these psychiatric drugs, but then Big Pharma will spend the money to vote somebody else in my seat, and then I can't even do the other good stuff I want to do.
Right.
So a lot of politicians are walking in fear. And so, you know, and I would never give the name of the person because I would say it in confidence.
Right.
But,
That's fine.
you know, it's something that we have to consider. So like one politician told me, he said, make me do it. See, in other words, you have to get the community to put enough pressure on me that I have to do what you're saying. See, because otherwise they just yield to the goodies of the good old game, you know?
Mm-hmm. And let's go to the second part, which is Killology, which a lot of people are concerned. So the first question is, what is Killology?
Killology is a system or as a concept that comes out of the bulletproof mind, warrior military type training. And what you have is a Dr. David Grossman, who was a professor of psychology at West Point, who came up with this military-like training that taught you to kill without hesitation, without reservation, and without guilt. In fact, he went so far to tell the people in the academies and the people in the training sessions, and just let you know, he's been doing this for over 20 years across this nation. And it basically, he would tell them that if you kill somebody, you have better sex at night and things like that. So it was actually designed for law enforcement to take a more military approach upon its own citizens. And so when you killed somebody, and we've traced at least 2 or 3 of the killings that have happened, that's made news and stuff, back to this training.
Okay. Right.
So what happens is you and I are in a car together. We don't put on a blinker light. Okay, cool. So they pull us over, but instead of addressing us, sir, do you know what you did? What infraction you did? Or do you know that it's more of the get out of the car, do this, do that demeaning type stuff, because you're coming at them militarily. So if I say, I got rights, now we really in a conflict because now the has to force his will upon me, even though all I've done was didn't use a blinkers or a signal light.
Right.
So we start off escalated to where when I was, and I tell people I was the Los Angeles County Sheriff Deputy. When I left the department, they were doing verbal judo and a lot of de-escalating type techniques. Then here comes Killology, this warrior mind, to boost them up, to teach them that the community is against them, but this is their community. I mean, law enforcement is a part of our society. Right. When you're off duty, you're a normal individual trying to play with your kids and get them in the best schools and do all of the things. So, but when you set them at war against the people that they're supposed to serve and protect, now you can set up a whole new scenario where people can get killed, where you destroy the manhood or the womanhood of the individual so that you can be the big shot, and that is not the way it's supposed to be.
No, and unfortunately, that's what's causing a lot of people not to trust the police. It's like people in many low-income areas fear both the criminals and the police, because unfortunately, you have a lot of the police, not all, you know, that are just as bad or worse than the criminals. So that's not serving any purpose. If anything, it's being counterproductive.
And let me just say this. A large part, and this is off of the tough topic, but I gotta say it, a large part of banning guns is because people want to have the right to violate your rights and not pay consequences. It will not benefit the citizens to ban guns, because what will happen is you will create, just like we've done throughout history, a black market where the criminals will still have their guns on the black market. The cops will have their guns, but the normal citizen doesn't have his. And so we have to make sure in our society, because we're looking at all of these shootings, and a guy got killed on Santa Monica and one of those streets, or Melrose, one of those streets, he was shot at a shoe store where they were doing some kind of raffle thing. It's like, you can't protect people from that. So why do we pretend that if we took all of the guns, that, oh, now we'll all be safe? The good people like me and you are not out here shooting people.
Mm-hmm.
We're not out here robbing people.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to be safe from criminals either way. But when somebody's busting in my house, at least I got protection to protect me and my family until the point law enforcement can get there. But you know how law enforcement is delayed in coming to the houses and trying to get there. So what are we supposed to do? Just sit there and die until, and then let law enforcement recover our bodies? I mean, that's not viable, and they're not really having real dialogue. It's Republicans against Democrats on all of these issues, and neither one of them really consider us. And that's the problem comes in. Neither one of them is considering us.
That's very true. And again, it all goes back to profit. You know, the NRA and all of these gun lobbying organizations, they just care about making profit. You know, personally myself, I am for gun control, especially responsible gun control, but I just feel that in general, it's like they make it easy for anyone to get a gun, even people that purchase it legally. Like you had mentioned, a lot of these shootings that you see with many people, especially like mass shootings, a lot of those people that did these crimes, well, actually they were law-abiding citizens. A lot of them were like members of the community that all of a sudden, and again, this goes back to mental health, all of a sudden they just snap, and they don't, this gun places, they don't really care to do a background check on people. It's like they just overlook it or whatever. And then when these people do these massacres, they always want to blame it on something else. Let it be the media, let it be drugs, let it be whatever. Okay, that may have been part of the problem, but they're not looking at the root of the problem, which is mental health and doing thorough background checks. And I feel that unless we get those two together and tie them in together, there's always going to be loopholes.
Well, and that's what I'm talking about. We have to figure the correct solutions and not based on who makes the money. It's like, why do we spend so much on mental health, but we don't spend the same amount of money on the programs that can stop a person before they even get to that stage? Most people will not have problems if they're making money. I've watched that second call program and different program where guys have come out of prison, gotten good jobs, and they're contributors to society. They're electrical workers and plumbers and carpenters and stuff, making good money, staying out of the way. We got to give people hope. And then there may be a small amount of people that maybe have to deal with in a different way. But the majority of society, we could help them if we just gave them the proper tools and taught them to read and taught them how to do the different things. Because I've seen it. I've had it in my group homes. I experimented with it, and I saw the difference it made when you started making it to where these kids can actually see a future because they can read and write.
Exactly.
And as difficult as they make it.
It's all about investing in the people. And the thing is that if government does not invest in the people, it's like, how do we expect for people to better themselves if people don't have the tools? It's like you have schools and you have vocational workshops where people can learn skills, but the problem is that it's not affordable. It's just as expensive, even more expensive, like it is going to for your college. So it's like, how are people going to get a good paying job, or at least try to make a minimum wage, when people are not skilled? And that's one thing that I tell people in my organization of Spanish United. It's like, you have to get an education. It's like you cannot expect, oh, I'm gonna work a place for 100 years and hopefully I'm gonna move up. No, that's not how it works. You have to get some type of a skill, because it's like, these are the values that many of our people unfortunately are passing on to our children, and that's not a future that we should, you know pass on to our children. It's like, let's say if someone works a menial job, let's say as a custodian. Okay, fine, it's an honest job, but it's something that you do temporarily until you're able to move up and find something better. That's not something you should do as a long-term career. Same thing working at McDonald's, same thing working at Burger King. So I think education is vital and important for survival of people having a better life. And I say this before many times. If people don't get an education, unless you're born rich or you come in a family of business people, or to give you a business, you won't be able to move up.
Well, you will get no argument out of me on that one. I agree with you wholeheartedly that education and knowledge is the key to everything. So I agree with you.
And the second question of Killology is, who created this line of training? A lot of people in the audience are interested to know.
Yeah, there was a guy named Dr. David Grossman, and there was a couple of others. I think one is named Lubitsky or something, but I don't want to misquote his name.
Mhm.
But there are several individuals who created this type of training, and they anticipated that it would be a favorite with law enforcement, because it makes you feel more powerful and so forth. But I've had people who were in law enforcement, some high-ranking people, said that if there was something to protest, that training would be one thing that the people should protest.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And and the third question is, who is affected by such training?
Well, the most effective is the Black and brown communities, but poor whites get treated a lot like that too.
Mhm.
The reason, from a law enforcement standpoint, when you're in the inner city, the chances are, because of the education you just brought up, that you're not running across the son or daughter of a lawyer.
Mhm.
So, you pretty much can try to do what you want to do. But when you are in the more affluent areas, people are lawyers, people are doctors, have connections, and they know the politicians and all that. So you just basically, act out those type of aggressions on people who are of color. That's all.
Mhm.
Black and Hispanic people, you shoot them when you take other people into custody and things like that. But I want to say one thing: 85% of all the law enforcement officers I know would run into a burning building to save a kid of any color or an adult of any color. The majority of the people who are law enforcement officers, and I'm just coming from my own experience, want to do right by the citizens and the community.
Mhm.
They want to go home to their families, and they want to raise their children. They're not trying to be part of this whole problem. So we need to be very careful when we blanket all law enforcement officers on what less than 15% of the people do.
Mhm. I agree with you, and I believe that there are many people in law enforcement that are astounding people. I myself have many relatives that are in law enforcement, and they are stand-up people. But however, unfortunately, as with anything, it seems that ours is the within the law enforcement. I don't know if it's because the standards are very low, which in my opinion they are, or they have such immunity that when a bad apple does something bad, they become cynical, like, okay, I could do whatever, I don't get punished, I don't get my pension taken away from me, I don't have to worry about consequences. So I feel that if there were to be a reform within the prisons and within the law enforcement, like what I would do is, like, I would not abolish the police, but I would reform it, reinstruction on the inside. I would institute higher standards. I would institute a data system that keeps track of officers that have been with so many complaints for doing similar things. And when there is plenty of evidence to hold someone accountable, they go out, they don't get pension, they don't get anything. So I feel that if we hold the bad apples accountable and punish them and remove them for when they do bad, I think this will not only increase society's confidence in the authority, but it will also clean out the bad apples. Because if we continue with the way our system is, that when someone does something bad, they don't get punished, they don't get scared, it's like they have automatic immunity. It just makes the police in our country no different than that of a third world country.
Well, I've thought about that long and hard, and I think what they should do is base it on the same system that we already have. I think when a law enforcement officer has a complaint or there's a shooting or whatever, that complaint or shooting is rated. If it's an infraction, it could be as low as, hey, look, watch what you're doing out there. How they said you cursed this individual, and so you be careful on how you treat people, because this can come back and get you. It could be a misdemeanor where you might end up having to have a day or 2 or 3 off. It could be a felony where you lose your job. You might be prosecuted. The systems are there. It is just that the people in charge have not been pushed to the point that they need to come up with viable solutions. And one of the things we got to deal with, and I'm not attacking them because they protect officers, right, but these unions are the ones that defend these officers when they do good or bad. And we have to look at that, because we blame the police chief, we'll blame the mayor,
right?
But it was the union when the chief said this person should be fired, no longer on this department. It's the union that goes up against the chief and defends that individual. So we have to just work this whole system out so that, but you have to put people in there in office that want to see that happen. And in long, everybody's playing the same game. The chief get blamed. The mayor walks down the street with the people singing Kumbaya, and then we attack the chief. Then the mayor talks big and bad, but nothing happens to the chief. The mayor never gets put on the hot spot himself, because he's the chief's boss. So if he really wanted to handle it, then you got the union blocking the chief. It's a very complicated situation.
Right, I agree with you. And the last question is, what can be done about this? Like, what is the solution that we can come up with in dealing with Chelology, in terms of either eliminating it or at least restricting it? Like, what is the solution that can be done about all this?
Well, the biggest thing that all organizations should be coming together and putting pressure on the politicians to ban it. That can be banned. Only Minnesota right now has done anything to ban Killology. California hasn't, other people haven't. And those are the subtle ways you support the treatment, because I cannot believe that governors and mayors and stuff have not been approached about this. So the thing is that the people, again, have to get organized. The Hispanic community has to organize. The Black community has to organize. The two groups need to come together and organize, because there's power in numbers. And in doing that, we can change this whole game. But as long as we continue to blame, and take no action, don't defeat people in the polls, let the same old game be played. I'm Republican, you Democrat, and and the issue might be easily resolved if the two of us were together, but I will not vote with you as a Republican. I will not vote with you as a Democrat. This can't be about party. This got to be about people.
Exactly. And that's one thing that, unfortunately, what's happening today is that people are so divided, not just on party lines, but also on racial lines. And when it comes down to it, we're all human beings. We all have different needs. We may have our differences in terms of, color, culture, etc. But we all are human, and we all go through the same things. And I believe that one of the things that I see with society in general is that there is no focus on social issues. And I think social issues is not a party issue or a racial issue. It's a moral issue. Justice is justice. It's like I am considering running for state assembly, and one of the two things that I am running for is on social issues, which is on homelessness and rent control. Those are the two things why we have so much homelessness and so much issue with poverty, is because you have people that are displaced because there are no rent controls. So a landlord could raise the rent from, let's say, if the rent was like 500 to 5,000 in a month, and people get displaced. It has nothing to do with the tenant being irresponsible, not wanting to pay. It's like, you can't raise the rent to a point that they cannot afford it. So a lot of people become displaced, and then a lot of people, when they become displaced, a lot of them are not able to take care of themselves. And as with mental health, you could have a person that was independent, sane, took care of his family and whatever, and then when they become displaced, they start to become mentally ill, because it affects them. So I feel that those two issues are very important for our state and also for many people, because homelessness is not just here in California, because a lot of conservatives and right-wing people like to poke at us, but you see that in many other states, and
Right.
homelessness and and people that are becoming displaced is one of the highest in the entire industrialized world. China, which has 1 billion people, which has like 20 times the population than we do, you could look at any city, even the poorest city in China, they don't have a bunch of homeless people in tents. That I know.
Well, and you are absolutely right on that. And the one thing that we have to understand is that um, across this nation, because I do travel it, and you see the homeless everywhere. But don't forget, a large percentage of the homeless come to California because of the weather.
Right.
Because you can actually live out on the streets here for pretty much. So where in New York, you have to find shelter if you want to or not, or they're going to find your frozen body.
Right.
So, you know, but no, you're absolutely right on that. And we have to address these things. I basically said that if we, first of all, house the working homeless, and I'm talking
Mhm.
about the people who sleep in their car at night and have gym memberships to use the restroom and take showers. If we house the working homeless first,
Mhm.
then we house the willing homeless. Those are people that want to work. Those are people who want to participate. Those are the people we can give the jobs to, cleaning up and doing things. And then from there, then we find a way, be it through the system or whatever, to handle that last portion. But we could easily handle 2/3 of the people just by creating opportunities. And they raise all this money for the housing and stuff for the homeless, but where is it going?
Right.
And we have estimates that the housing of the homeless is going to jump about 80% because during this pandemic, a lot of people who were not paying their rents to their landlord, well, once they finally lift it all, they have to come up with 25% of that money. And they haven't done that. So it's going to be, very difficult thing, but it's going to take a lot of young people like you. Um, I'm 66 years old. I don't know how much time I got left, but it's
Mhm.
going to be the young people like you who have to step up and think it through like you're doing, and creating platforms and looking at running for the assembly. And that's where the future is. It's not with the old guys who held up the door until people scooted through. We didn't held it long enough. Now we need the younger people to put a prop under that door so it won't come down, and take it to the next level and keep moving like that.
Mhm. I agree with you, and I think that as far as Killology is concerned, I do believe it should be banned, and I think there should be other alternatives to deal with crime, because it's like the way Killology is being implemented, what it's doing is that it's not helping society, it's making it worse. And
Exactly.
I just feel that it just desensitizes the police officers that that do it. It's like, it's not right, it's not fair, and unfortunately, a lot of people are being affected by it. Even people that are not criminals. Let's say they have a relative, that gets, murdered by someone that's in the police force, and then they can't sue them or make them pay. It's like it's very frustrating for many many people because as with politicians, they're public servants. The police, they are public servants. It's like our taxes pay their salary. We are not there to be afraid of them. They are there to be in service of us. It's like the police. In my view, I think the only people they're afraid of is actually the criminals. They're not the police are not the police. I mean, the criminals are not scared of the police. The police are actually scared of the criminals. And I feel that in many ways the police take their frustration on the citizens that are not criminals and nothing to do with what the criminals are doing.
You are spot on. That's correct. Yep, I agree wholeheartedly.
It's insane.
Hmm.
Well,
But we just all got to keep contributing to society, doing the best we can. We can never give up. We always got to keep striving for the improvement and the betterment of mankind. And hopefully at some point, the tide turns and the good people start winning.
exactly. Okay, thank you. I want to tell you thank you very much for coming on the show, Fred. It's always an honor and interesting speaking with you, always hearing your points of view. And as soon as I'm done, I will send you the link to the podcast where you could listen to it and share it with family and friends and colleagues.
Okay, thank you so much. I
Not a
appreciate
problem.
it.
Have yourself a wonderful evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.